We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Josh Horn is with us from the Social Security Administration. If you want to join in the conversation, ask a question about maybe your claim, Social Security, where we're at. Did you say you dug up the number on the new Medicare premium?
The new base premium, the increase for the Medicare Part B is about $121. Now, depending, like I said, on what Medicare Advantage plan you take or prescription drug plan and the combination of the plans, you may, or we also have that the adjustment based on your gross income. If you're a higher earning or higher income individual, you may be paying more based on that adjusted amount. But the base is $121.
Okay, that's the new one. Just so you take note of that. And if people don't see this, how are they going to find out? They get it in the mail that it's, or they're notified.
Right. They should be. Everybody should be receiving letters over the next couple weeks. So.
Gotcha. All right, let's take some phone calls. We'll go to Jerry. Jerry, good morning. How can we help you?
Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Jerry.
I need to ask a question. My son-in-law, he'll be 64 in March, and if he takes his Social Security early now and keeps on working at the job he's on, will his Social Security be the same as early retirement, or when he gets 66? Will he still be able to get the full benefits?
Yeah, okay, yeah. He wants to take it early maybe, but keep working. And will that cushion the blow from taking it early?
Yeah, there's a couple things to consider in this scenario. One is that for every month that you take your Social Security benefits early, in this case about 2 years worth of benefit, 2 years worth early, there's going to be a permanent reduction. So you don't get that back when you turn full retirement age. Some people think that it then automatically goes up, but if you take it early, that's a permanent reduction. So that's something you need to consider.
But now, isn't he still putting more into it because he continues to work?
Yeah, the other thing is the work activity, and of course, if you're under your full retirement age, your work activity is counted, and so for somebody who's 64 years old, the earnings limit would be about $15,000 before we would start having to hold back some money. And so let's say he was going to make about $20,000. That'd be about $5,000 over the earnings limit. We have to hold back half of that out of his benefits. So we may have to hold back around $2,500 out of his benefits. So that's something to consider as well.
Okay. Do a lot of people do that?
There are, especially folks who might come in and they file in January and they say, hey, I may have to give up a check or two, but I need this money now. I've got health concerns or whatever else.
Sure.
And I am working a little bit, but I need this extra money. So we may have to hold back a check or two, but then they get 10 months of checks, and that's the better scenario for them. It's just kind of every individual's a little different.
Case by case. Jerry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, my friend. That's a good question. A lot of people, trying to decide if it's worth taking it earlier. Now, we may get more into that, and again, it depends on your situation. But I want you to remind people of how much you sacrifice sometimes when you do that.
And you can go, and when you create a My Social Security account, they've got a calculator. You can put in as many scenarios as you want to say, maybe I'll retire. How much will I get this month? How much will I get if I wait 6 months? How much if I wait till age 66? And a lot of people like to plug in all those what-if scenarios.
Yeah, that's what it actually is quite interesting because it's really your money and you're saying, this gives you something to think about. Let's go to Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hey, how can we help you?
Well, I'd like to ask a question, please. When a woman's husband dies and his wife starts drawing his Social Security, does she draw the same amount that he was drawing or less than he was drawing?
Yeah, there's a few different factors that come into play when we talk about survivor benefits. It depends on how old he was when he started drawing, how old she was when she started drawing the survivor benefits. Those are some of the main factors, because if she's 61 years old, maybe he was 70 years old and passed away, and then
They're the same age.
Well, if they're the same age, a lot of times it will be pretty much the same amount. The survivors can get a little tricky. Like I said, depending on if he took it early, there may be sometimes there's what they call the RIB limit, the retirement limitation, and so sometimes there's some limitations. But and a lot of times it's just a direct. You just switch right over to what he was drawing. So.
Is that what you're going to do?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when you really get into some specific situations like that, sometimes it's good to go ahead and get your numbers pulled rather than talking generalities, which is pretty much all I can do on the show.
Exactly. Again, the number is 737-7587 if you want to jump in with some questions about, perhaps your Social Security case. Some lines are open. We had a caller who couldn't stay on that wanted to ask, and we get this typically. They're in the process now, and they've gone to the appeals level. And they're just wondering why it takes so long. And that's a very common question. I remember the first time when we started doing these shows, I was amazed at really how long sometimes it takes. But then you step back and realize the huge amount of cases you're dealing with and how much review has to be done. Because we're talking about disability, 100%.
Right.
What is the definition of that?
Yeah, again, the definition for Social Security disability, and different insurances and programs out there may have different definitions, but our definition of disability is that it has to be 100%, and it has to be expect to be to last for at least a year or longer, or end in death. And so what we see sometimes is that people may be 80% disabled, which is a significant disability, but it doesn't meet that 100%. Or they're 100%, but it's not expected to last for a year. And I know a lot of times, sometimes stroke victims are like this, where they are 100% disabled. But the expectation is that with physical therapy and things like that, that they'll be able to make some recovery within that year. And so that's where it gets tricky, at least on the front end. But when you start getting to the appeals, a couple things happen. One is because it takes a while, we actually see whether they were able to make a recovery over the period of a year or not. The other thing is that, like you said, there's a lot of case workload for when you talk about the hearings level for the judges to look through, and they have to scrutinize the law and past precedents, and they may send you for a consultative examination to have one of the doctors on staff take a look and make some evaluations. And so there's just a lot of different factors that go in trying to make this decision, and so I don't know, that's probably not a lot of comfort, but hopefully it's a little bit of explanation.
You just can't give up. I mean, stick with it, I suppose. I mean, you have no choice, but it takes a while. Sometimes people are waiting and they pass away, don't they?
Right, and in those cases, the family should get us the death certificate and any other information, because sometimes, particularly if they pass away from their condition, that may be that may end the argument, so to speak, and go ahead and get some benefits. It may not be payable to the individual, obviously, but maybe there's some minor children or a spouse or somebody that we can pay the money that would have gone to the claimant. Yeah,
that's the trick, and that does raise the question too. I think about someone who's put into Social Security. I mean, if I were to die tomorrow, okay, I've put a ton of money into Social Security over the years, like most of us have. And aside from a benefit to my wife, if I were single, what would happen to that money? Does it just get sucked back into the system? Which I guess it doesn't go to anyone, right?
Well, the thing is, a lot of people think that a lot of people think that they're paying into their own account. Yeah. And what's happening is that we're all paying into this big account, in the sky, so to speak, that then the current beneficiaries are pulling from. Sure. And that's part of the reason why you hear about all what's going to happen in Social Security in the next however many years, is because back in the 60s and 70s, you had 5 workers for every 1 person that's drawing benefits. You had a lot more folks paying into the system than drawing out of the system. But now we're down to 3 workers for every person who's drawing.
That's a trick.
And here before too long, it's going to be down to 2 to 1, and that's why there's such a draw on the program. Yeah, all the baby boomers aging now, and that's an important point to remember. Then, right now, what I'm doing is paying for the folks that are on Social Security now, okay? And then by the time I'm ready to retire, it'll be the next group. And if you say at that point it's going to be 2 or 3 workers per recipient, then that puts the squeeze on it, doesn't it? I mean, that's going to be a big deal. Again, the number is 737-7587 if you want to jump in. Whenever someone talks about waiting a long time, I always wonder if they've had an issue with the application process, making a mistake or something. One little mistake can get in the way. What do you tell people, and I know you don't advocate one way or the other, if they ask you about hiring a lawyer? Yeah, in those kind of scenarios, there's a couple things that I say, and really, I am kind of non-committal with
Yeah, you don't have a
lawyers
preference.
because,
I mean, cool.
but you know, a lot of folks who may need that additional help or may feel more comfortable with the lawyer. But what I do tell them about them is to remember that the attorney or third-party representative does not receive any compensation if you don't win, and so that's something to keep in mind. And they also are paid out of your retroactive pay. So if it takes you 2 years to get your benefits, and so you get 2 years in a lump sum, that their compensation comes out of that retroactive pay. And there's
And what's the percentage again? What's the max they can get?
It's the lesser of 25%, or I believe $6,000,
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Look, and if a lawyer's the one that can find out whatever the gap is that you're making a mistake on and get you that, something is better than nothing. You're still getting 75% of what you would have gotten, and that lawyer gets a percentage. And is it to that point where there's some people that may be out there right now are watching where they're in the appellate process or they've applied and they just keep waiting and waiting, and sometimes it's as simple as them having not provided the proper information on some of the forms.
Well,
just because they didn't know. It's complex. There's a lot to it.
You know, if I talk to folks and they're saying I'm thinking about applying for disability, I remind them of two things. One is list everything that's wrong with you, because sometimes they say, well, I can't work because I have back problems. Well, but they also have diabetes and high blood pressure and sleep apnea and half a dozen other things. And if they come in and they only list back problems, that's probably not going to, because then we're only going to look for medical records that have to do with the back problems. But when you take a combination of things, that may make all the difference in the world. The other thing that I mentioned is if they send you for a consultative examination, make sure you go. We have a lot of folks who miss those consultative examinations, and it either severely delays the process, or if you miss a couple of them, then they're going to deny the claim because they weren't able to gather enough medical evidence. And so make sure and go to those if they schedule one for you. And if there's problems with it, make sure you talk to your interviewer.
It's a long process, folks. All right, again, we'll take a break right now. When we come back, hey, you're lucky. Some lines are open. It usually gets very busy. It's a little slower this morning. So if you do have a question, you can get through. And as we go to the break, I want to remind you, I brought that up about lawyers because that's an option. But you certainly don't need one to apply. A lot of people do it on their own, and that's perfectly fine, and they're successful. It's always just an option. My take would be is if I keep doing it myself and have no success, I'm going to try a lawyer at that point and say, well, you know, maybe I'm missing something. I'll try a lawyer. But I might give it a shot first time on my own. You know, we'll take a break. Be back with more right after this. Stay with us.